Exhibition pieces, 70. If it be thought desirable to have ready a variety of frames which can be fitted up at a moderately short notice, some of the following will be found useful and capable of being mounted with fireworks in many effective ways. In the first place, there is the large vertical wheel, the frame of which is described at figure 115. This should be not less than 4 feet in diameter, and should turn on an iron spindle made of 3/8 of an inch rod. The following is a good, useful sort of spindle for large wheels, figure 116, being very steady and easily fixed to your post. AA represents the post, which should be 10 feet out of the ground. BB represents the spindle, which has an iron collar at C, and a large thumbscrew at DD. The collar is fixed to the spindle and is placed against the face of the post. The thumbscrew is screwed up tightly at the back of the post and keeps the spindle firmly in position. The other end of the spindle may be tapped for a short distance and have a small nut to fit it, in order to keep the wheel from working off. This, however, is not of much importance, as a piece of cork tied on will do as well. The wheel should have a nave of hard wood, through which a hole is bored to admit the spindle. And in the case of all vertical wheels, it should be borne in mind that they will revolve much more lightly and easily if the spindle does not touch the wood of the nave at all, but works through 2 iron or brass plates, fastened one on the back and the other on the front of the nave, and having holes drilled in them of a size proper to admit the spindle without too much play. The working of a large wheel will be very much more satisfactory if this plan be adopted, and the wood of the nave be not allowed to touch the spindle at all. For a wheel of 4 feet in diameter, there should be 6 spokes, to the ends of which is fastened a strong ash or beechwood hoop. There should also be another wooden hoop 6 inches nearer to the center of the wheel, as is shown at figure 115. The pieces with which I have there represented the wheel as fitted up are as follow. A are 12 brilliant reported fixed cases, which, as will be remembered, are cases having an interior bore of 7/16 of an inch, and reported with a gun charge of powder at their end, and filled with brilliant fire. Each of these is fastened to the 2 outer wooden hoops at a slight angle, and all their mouths are connected with quick match, the end of which is to be brought to the bottom of the wheel and tied to the post which carries the wheel. This tying will have the effect of steadying the wheel until the time arrives for firing the fixed cases. B are 6 triangle wheels, the turning cases of which are filled with brilliant fire and carrying each a color. The cases need not be larger in diameter than the fixed cases mentioned above. In my sketch I have described them as double triangle wheels, but the artist must decide for himself whether they shall be double or single, i.e., whether they shall have 6 or 3 cases apiece. In front of the nave of the wheel is placed a much smaller vertical wheel, C, on the same spindle. This may be made to carry 6 turning cases of brilliant fire, and as many colors as you think proper. The cases may be made to burn singly or doubly, i.e., 2 cases at a time upon opposite sides of the wheel. Supposing the wheel represented at figure 115 to be mounted with one smaller central vertical wheel, with 6 cases and colors, 6 small brilliant single triangle wheels with colors, and 12 brilliant reported fixed cases. The way in which it should be fired is this. Connect together by quick match all the single triangle wheels, and let the end of this match be secured, where it can be found with readiness, and where also it is out of the reach of sparks. I will now suppose the cases on the central wheel to burn singly, in which case fire, firstly, the central wheel, and when 3 of its cases are all but burnt out, put your port fire to, secondly, the match which is to start the 6 single triangle wheels. When these are half burned out, i.e. when about a case and a half is consumed on each, fire thirdly, the quick match which connects all the reported fixed cases on the circumference of the wheel, and you will then have a revolving piece of fire nearly 12 feet in diameter, of which the sketch at figure 119 is intended to give you an idea. The framework of this piece is, as you will at once see, capable of being fitted up in many other ways. For instance, instead of triangle wheels, you might use Saxons. Instead of a central illuminated vertical wheel, you might have a 6-pointed star in white lancework. In fact, there is hardly any limit to the variety which might be produced, if the artist will only acquaint himself with the value and adaptability of the single pieces which are treated of in the former numbers of this series of papers. We now come to the last page of illustrations, where is described a set piece known by the name of the latticed work piece, figure 121. This may be made either with 24 brilliant reported fixed cases and 6 colored fires, or with 36 fixed cases and 9 colored fires. The sketch is made to represent the arrangement as it should be for 36 cases and 9 colors. If used with only 24 cases and 6 colors or 5-pointed stars, it will be a large piece and quite effective enough for a display of ordinary pretensions. It is made by fastening brilliant reported fixed cases to squares of wood, and fixing these squares at equal distances from one another, so that the fire from the cases represents lattice work. Provide for this purpose as many squares as you require, 1/2 inch thick and 7 inches square. To each of these fasten the reported ends of 4 brilliant fixed cases by boring holes on each side of the cases through the wood and fastening them by means of wire or string in their places. In the center of each square fasten either a colored case or a 5-pointed star. Each square, when mounted, will be like the adjoining sketch. The distance from one another at which these wooden squares should be fixed must depend upon individual taste. You must remember that the farther apart you fix your upright posts in the ground, the longer the posts must be, as you cannot spread the piece sideways without increasing its height. A good distance apart for the posts will be 3 feet 6 inches. If this distance be observed, and 9 squares are used, you will require posts at least 15 feet out of the ground. But if 6 squares are used, which I think you will find effective enough, posts 12 feet out of the ground will be sufficiently high. At figure 121, you will see that, for additional effect, I have placed at the top of the 2 side posts large gerbs. I should make these certainly not smaller than the 1/4 pound size, and as long as the fixed cases employed. Fill them with meal powder, 3 parts, iron borings, 1 part. These gerbs must be connected by quick match with the squares which are on the same posts with them. At the top of the central post I should place either a simple horizontal or a capricious wheel, the manufacture of which I described in my paper on wheels. The capricious wheel will be the most effective. In order to prepare the piece for firing, bring all the pieces of match which are to convey the fire to the brilliant squares and gerbs to a point in the center of the piece, leaving them long enough to be tied together in a bundle round the case of the match. Beyond the point where the match cases are all tied together, leave at least 6 inches of each quick match bare, and tie these bare pieces together in 1 or 2 places. Unless this precaution is taken, some of your squares will have a good chance of not being fired at all. But by this means they can hardly misfire. The object is to give all the bare ends of match time to take fire before the fire reaches the covered part of any of the matches. Figure 121 will give you some idea as to what the latticework piece should look like before it is fired. To fire it, light first the piece of quick match which hangs from the capricious wheel. When 4 cases on this wheel are burnt out, light the collected ends of quick match in the center of the latticework. These ends must on no account be exposed until they are to be fired. Therefore, some paper must be wrapped round them, which can easily be removed. At once your brilliant cases, stars, and gerbs will be ignited, and will burn while the remainder, which is the best part of the capricious wheel, is going through its revolutions. You will then, if all goes right, have such a piece as is represented at figure 122. My next illustration shows a simple but beautiful piece, having for its center a wheel such as I have described in my papers on colored lights, lances, etc., and consisting of 4 double triangles, executed in white lances, and a large 4-pointed star in brilliant fire. Figure 123 represents the framework mounted, as it appears before firing. This framework is simply 4 arms, made of deal and fastened into a solid center. The arms may be 5 feet long. At the extremities of these arms are fastened 4 double triangles made of deal lathe or any light material. Upon these little frames fasten white lances by driving in short pieces of iron wire into the woodwork, and after boring the closed end of the lances with a very small awl, sticking a lance upon every wire pin with the mixture of glue and red lead recommended in former papers. Then clothe the double triangles with quick match in the usual way, and connect them all. In the next place, fasten on each of the arms, at a suitable distance from the center of the piece, 2 reported brilliant fixed cases, in the manner indicated in the sketch. Clothe these with match, and connect them. For the center of the piece, take the wheel with dangling colors, explained under the head of colored lights, and fit it up carefully. The piece will thus be ready to be fixed to its post. To do this, you will require an iron spindle, something like the one I have recommended for the 4 feet vertical wheel, with this difference, that the framework of our present piece must not revolve, but remain stationary. The center wheel alone is to revolve, which it will do well enough on such a spindle. But remember that all vertical wheels used as centers to large pieces must be brought well forward before the rest of the piece, otherwise the sparks from them will fire the other parts before their time. I will now suppose that you have the piece represented at figure 123. You must first start the central wheel, which should be connected by match with the triangles at the extremities of the arms. These will then burn together until a case and a half of the central wheel is consumed, at which time strike in the 8 brilliant fixed cases, and this done, your piece will take the form represented at figure 124. These will then burn together until a case and a half of the central wheel is consumed, at which time strike in the 8 brilliant fixed cases, and this done, your piece will take the form represented at figure 124. We now come to the last of my designs, by which is represented at figure 117 a large set piece worthy of proving a finale to any exhibition, and at the same time by no means difficult of preparation. The framework of this piece consists of a solid wooden center, into which are secured 6 arms made of deal, in such a manner that they are like the spokes of a large wheel in their arrangement. The arms for this piece, and for that represented in figure 123, should be 5 feet in length, 2 inches in width, and an inch full in thickness. For the sake of economy, I think you will find it well to make one center do for both these pieces, by having grooves cut in one side of it to hold 6 arms, and in the other side for 4, as you would never require both these pieces in the same exhibition. The grooves in my framework are about half an inch deep on each side of a circular flat center of oak, 2 inches in thickness and 12 inches in diameter. They impart greater steadiness to the arms than could be gained by screws alone. So much for the framework, which you will see is, when put together, 10 feet in diameter, and can always be taken to pieces for the purpose of economizing space. If you have 6 arms made, you can use either 4 or all of them at pleasure. Now for the pieces with which this framework is to be mounted. In the center there should be a large double triangle frame, mounted with white or colored lances. The 6 laths of which this framework should be made should be each 3 feet 6 inches long and about 5/8 of an inch square. The lances placed upon them should be not less than 3½ inches apart. These must all, of course, be connected by quick match. The 6 angles of the double triangle should rest upon the 6 spokes of the framework of the piece. At a distance of an inch or 2 outside each angle should be fixed a 5-pointed star, and close to it 2 brilliant reported fixed cases, which must be connected by quick match, and fastened at such an angle with the framework that their fires may meet at a point between the 6 triangle wheels, which, lastly, are to be placed at the extremities of the long arms. The cases on these wheels are to be filled with brilliant fire, and each wheel is to carry a color in its center. To fire this piece, begin with the central double triangle, and when this is well lighted, fire the 6 triangle wheels and 5 pointed stars, and when one of the triangle wheels is consumed, fire the 12 brilliant fixed cases. And your piece will be of the shape given at figure 118. With this piece I close my papers on pyrotechny. I trust that I have left nothing unsaid which could make the directions given for these pieces more clear, and I hope that many an amateur will soon have arrived at such a state of proficiency as will enable him not only to prepare such pieces as these, but any variation upon them. No piece should be used as a finale to any exhibition unaccompanied by 2 batteries of Roman candles containing colored stars. These so-called batteries consist simply of 4, 6, or any number of Roman candles fastened to upright posts at such an angle that they may throw their stars over the center of the piece from each side of it. Any number of serpent or cracker mines that can be brought to bear while the finale is in full force will greatly enhance the effect, if fired from behind it. In conclusion, I believe that, in any village even, were anyone to manifest a desire to become a successful pyrotechnist, and to interest his intelligent neighbors in his adopted art, he would find that in most cases they would lend a hand and show an activity in the preparation of a public exhibition to a degree which no one who has not tried the experiment would anticipate. Many a long evening might be shortened by discussion with the artisans of the place as to the best mode of making what is usually known as a grand flare-up for Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve. And if I am not very much mistaken, such a discussion would prove at least as interesting to any inquiring mind as the very desultory and questionable source of information commonly called penny readings, at which it is the fashion to spoil so much good writing by bad reading, and so much good music by bad singing. It cannot but be evident that any exhibition of fireworks in a place must be to a certain extent public. All who can will do their utmost to get their chins above the level of the walls or fences which are intended to make any exhibition private. And quite rightly, too, in my opinion. Though no longer a boy, I should do the same now, unless I had reason to believe that the grand display was about to consist of a certain number of dozens of squibs, crackers, and pinwheels, fired as fast as circumstances will allow, considering the number of times that the lantern is blown out by the incautious application of one or other of the above-named combustibles to its flame. In the cases of experiments, which must be made before every exhibition, I think that the more private one can keep them, the better. But if there is to be an exhibition, why not let everyone who can not only see it, but give assistance in its preparation? You will by this means not only ensure a much more real interest in your success, but gain the satisfaction of having proved to many an intelligent villager the important truth that he is capable of doing something for which he had never suspected the slightest capability. These hints I throw out merely as suggestions. They have been acted on with the most satisfactory results, and I feel sure that they may be turned to account. But everything will depend, of course, upon the manner in which the plan is worked out, and the spirit felt by those whose aid it is proposed to engage. I need only add to these remarks that if it can be shown that my work has done anything towards making pyrotechnic recreation more general, reasonable, and possible than it has hitherto been, I shall consider myself amply rewarded for the time that has been spent, much to my own gratification, in making and recording the results of my experiments. The end. Finis. That is the end of Pyrotechny by Practicus.